Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic Hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to talk to you about the latest episode of The Boys. It was called Dirty Business. And as it starts, Butcher wakes his prisoner and tells him he needs to make more virus. Huey takes his dad's ashes on a Made in Manhattan walking tour, which is a tour of New York that I guess brings tourists by some of the sites that were seen in the movie Made in Manhattan with Jennifer Lopez, to scatter his ashes on the tour in accordance with his dad's wishes. Kimiko tries to visit Frenchie in lockup, but he has apparently refused all visitation. A-Train calls Mother's Milk out of fear that he's going to get killed in the wake of the killing of the guy that was scapegoated for the leak. And Mother's Milk gets Huey and Starlight to crash Tech Knight's social event. But first, they need to get a degenerate soup called Webweaver, who takes drugs for payment, which Mother's Milk ends up having to inject rectally for him, to loan them his super costume for Huey to wear, because Webweaver is on the guest list of the party that they want to crash for some reason. So Huey infiltrates the party to plant some bugs, and he struggles not to get made. Homelander and Sage are apparently planning to install Victoria as president after using the 25th Amendment to get rid of the president-elect once he's inaugurated, and we kind of knew about this already. Tech Knight takes Huey as Webweaver to his sex dungeon as an initiation to becoming his sidekick, which I guess is why he's at the party. And we find that he's got his former sidekick chained up down there in a full gimp suit. NOIR and Deep talk about how NOIR is frustrated at playing noir. Starlight and Kimiko decide to infiltrate the party to get Huey out before something happens to him. So Mother's Milk gives them a bunch of grenades and decides to go with them. Butcher has a conversation with imaginary Ryan's mother, Becca. She tries to tell him that killing Homelander isn't going to change anything because there will always be another Homelander. Kimiko scales the side of the mansion that the party is being held in and lets Mother's Milk and Starlight in on the ground. After Victoria has a particularly disgusting conversation with one of the attendees at the party, to a point where she imagines exploding her own head, she talks with Sage, who asks her if she's in or out on the plan after explaining to her that she actually could cure cancer and end global warming, but why bother because humans suck. Back in the dungeon, things are heating up as Tech Knight hangs himself by the neck from the ceiling, just enough so his feet can touch the floor, expecting Huey as Webweaver to sit on a German chocolate cake without any pants on and fart as he touches himself. Tech Knight, that is. At which point, Ashley shows up to also participate. Butcher talks with Joe about how, for him, adjusting to being home from war was difficult after everything he saw in the war. Huey then finds himself trussed up like a sex slave as Ashley tickle tortures him and talks dirty to him while he struggles to figure out what Webweaver's safe word is, but he doesn't manage to before Ashley climaxes and then rubs some of her output on Huey's face over his mask. Firecracker finds Starlight in the house, and they have a talk before Starlight injects Firecracker with a tranquilizer. Ted Knight asks Huey for Webweaver's safe word, which of course he doesn't know, and then unmasks him and threatens to carve him some new holes to use, and says he'll turn him in after that. While Kimiko pulls the right book in Tech Knight's library to open the sex dungeon, Mother's Milk is forced to shoot Sage in the head to stop her from ringing an alarm. And then he seems to have a heart attack before Kimiko gets A-Train to take him to the hospital. Starlight and Kimiko rescue Huey while Homelander tries to woo the powerful folks at the party to go in on his plan to oust the new president. And it almost goes south, with Sage's brain still growing back after being shot, until Victoria takes the lead and seals the deal. Huey, Starlight, and Kimiko torture Tech Knight by hacking his bank accounts and giving his money away to liberal causes, and he confesses that he agreed to allow his prisons to be used as internment camps when the soup regime takes over, prompting his own butler to kill him in anger as our heroes flee. And the butler also reveals at that time that Webweaver's safe word was Zendaya. Firecracker tells Homelander about Starlight being at the mansion, and he realizes the guy they killed for being the leak wasn't the leak. And when he's pissed that she let Starlight get away, she backs him off by letting him suckle her bosom, which is full of milk because she took a bunch of drugs to make it possible for her to lactate without being pregnant, just for him. Butcher learns that the virus can't be made to kill Homelander because at that strength, it would evolve and go airborne, killing all the Supes, including his son. And when imaginary Becca starts telling him he can't do that, as he's arguing with Joe over it, with Joe telling them that he has to, we learn that Butcher is also imagining Joe, that he was never really there. And as the episode ends, Joe tells him that he's really just his own inner voice, which means that it's really him that wants to kill all the Supes. And that's where the episode ended. So I really liked this episode more than I think the last one because it had fewer moving parts and it was easy to see what was happening in this episode and it just felt more cohesive to me. The sex dungeon stuff was just insane and I enjoyed every second of that because it was just so gross and off the charts. And it was funny seeing them torture Tech Knight by giving his money away to liberal causes until he told them what they wanted to know. That was very funny. And, I liked the scenes at the party where they were showing all the billionaires say these crazy, super right-wing MAGA things because it was just funny. Although at the same time, I thought it was a little heavy-handed. But, I think they put it in there to make it funny because you get to see, for example, Victoria react to it like these people are nuts. And, then to have the reveal that Firecracker has been making herself lactate so that she could bond with Homelander, and then seeing him go for it was just creepy. And, then of course the reveal that Butcher has been imagining Joe, which a number of folks online had predicted, and which once they did, I started to think they were right, and it turns out that they were, and that's crazy. And, it just speaks to how messed up he is. So I just really thought this episode was great. And then, there's the moment where Sage takes a bullet to the brain and recovers, but she's kind of duh for a while until her brain fully grows back. I thought that was pretty funny. I was glad they got away from the Ryan plot, which, wasn't thrilling me. I was glad they didn't linger on anything with Frenchie. In fact, I don't think he's even in the episode. They didn't linger on anything with Kimiko, which, I don't think is always entertaining. This was just a very nitty-gritty, sort of intense episode that I think worked really well and better than some of the more recent ones. I do have a question or two. For example, are we ever going to see Maeve again? I would really like to see her back. Are we ever going to see Starlight put her costume back on and use her powers again? I'd like to see that. And are we ever going to see what the hell exactly it is that Firecracker's powers are? Because I'm not getting it. She snapped her fingers a couple of times and made a little spark, but that's not much of a superpower. So are we ever going to see her use her powers? I'd like to see that. I'd also like to see Huey and Starlight get back together. I wonder if that's going to happen. They haven't really been teasing it or anything, but I'd still like to see it happen. So we'll have to see. But that's really it. So I'm going to get out of here. I'll be back to do a breakdown and review of the next episode once it's released. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.